welcome to Chrysalis on the Couch. So my name is Jude Mason and I'm a Year 2 and Year 3 tutor for Chrysalis, and I also have my own private practice in Nottingham. And I'm being joined today by Mark Moore and Kirsty Knight. So today we're going to be talking about mental health apps, and we're going to be discussing some of our own opinions about those and sharing our own experiences. But first of all, I'm going to pass you on to Mark and Kirsty to introduce themselves. So Mark, do you want to start us off, please?
Hi, hello everybody, I'm Mark Moore. I'm a Year 3 counselling student, just hopefully about halfway into my final year. I have a very small hypnotherapy practice just getting started, and I'm a mindfulness teacher as well.
That's fantastic, Mark, thank you. So you might know us a little bit about mindfulness apps as well, that we can kind of pick your brains on later.
Yeah.
And Kirsty.
Hi everyone, I'm Kirsty Knight. I'm also a tutor for Chrysalis for Year 2 and Year 3. Been doing that for quite a while now. I also run a training collaboration where we deal with various mental health courses, improvement of knowledge and dealing with and coping strategies. And I also run my own space, but I also do hypnotherapy as well. So it's quite a busy time, so that's good.
So lots of different experiences, lots of, different knowledge here today. So mental health apps. What's your initial kind of thought about mental health apps?
For me, I just see them as a necessary evil, and I suppose confessing to be at an age where probably the front end of the early adopters of technology. But I think I saw a stat that 95% of homes now possess a smartphone, not just a normal mobile phone. And I think sort of 16 to 24 age group, it's 99%. I think up to us all about 35, 40s, it's 98% of people actually own or have access to a smartphone. So that sense of as a medium to be used and communicate with, they're here to stay. So by default, it's about us also getting used to that technology and how it can help clients potentially.
Yeah, I agree with you. And especially, I find as well, especially younger clients are perhaps a little bit more open to, because they use their phones so much, don't they? It's a resource, isn't it, that they can use. What about you, Kirsty? Are you kind of quite open to?
Yeah, I mean, I'm open to whatever feel will help the client, or even our own personal development as well, because let's face it, we're all human. We all go through various phases and deal with it in different ways. So I'll quite happily adopt pretty much anything if I think it's going to be a positive influence. Sometimes I do query. And as I said, I use the word positive because I think we can all be keyboard warriors, can't we? With regards to Googling different things and trying to find out. And don't get me wrong, knowledge is power, and giving people more access to more information. Yeah, it's a good thing. But I think sometimes it can also be a bit of a hindrance. So I think as long as we can manage, or the client can manage their input with it as well. But I think if there are positive tools to help people along with issues or concerns they have, then yeah. And one of it's not a mental health app, but have you heard of this What 3 Words? Yeah. That is such a positive thing, especially when you're working with survivors of domestic abuse. If they've had to leave their home very quickly, then What 3 Words can pinpoint where they are very quickly for the emergency services. If because how many in olden times before mobile phones, if you had a car that broke down, you're like, well, I've just passed a signpost for the B3679 or something, but you don't know where you are. So the What 3 Words app, I know, is something that within that sort of realm, we encourage people to have on their phones as well. So again, it's a positive, I think. So anything that's positive, I'm up for that. And I think you've got to have an open mind when you do this work.
Well, I think you've got to move with the times, haven't you? I mean, you know, when we're talking about technology, I mean, you and I, Kirsty, are both tutors. Mark, you're a student. I mean, if you think of, you know, last year, well, about 15 months ago, when we all had to go on Zoom, you know, that was a challenge, wasn't it? Not just for students, it was a challenge for tutors as well. But if we hadn't have kind of, you know, grasped that challenge and gone with it, you know, it just wouldn't have worked at all, would it? So I think there is this feeling that you have got to go with the technology, otherwise you're going to get left behind. But you mentioned there, Kirsty, using apps ourselves, and we'll kind of go on to talk about clients. But have you guys had experience of using an app yourself for your own self-care?
For myself, I use something called Headspace, which is a meditation sort of mindfulness app. Which you know, I teach mindfulness a little bit, and it's what I recommend. I think anything that keeps people engaged between sessions, that's what it's saying with counselling people, that, you know, having an hour a week, great, but it's that sense of what can they do in between sessions. I think something that gives them that motivation, or just brings them back to what it is they're trying to achieve, is really useful. I think, you know, there's nothing worse than you've had an hour with someone and off they go, they come back a week later and it's half the sessions then just reminding what you covered the previous week. So I think that keeping that engagement is really useful for that. And
you use that yourself then, Mark?
Yes, yeah, definitely,
yeah. I mean, Headspace, I think when you talk about mental health apps, I've said to a few people recently, what do you think of, or what app do you think of when, you know, if I say mental health apps, nearly everybody will say Headspace. It's massively, massively popular, isn't it?
I also like the Calm app, and I think that was probably my first foray into. I know it's not technically a mental health one, but it does present, you know, calming situations, noises, and all this sort of stuff. So certainly for me, sometimes I suffer with bad night's sleep. And I used the Calm app initially to try and find different things that could quieten my head in order for me to get to sleep and things like that. And I've actually found that the noise of the sea, the rhythmic sound of that, is what really helps me. So what then that enabled me to do, I went out and bought a CD of that sound. And then I've I've downloaded it onto my iTunes. So now, no matter where I am, and I've always, I'm one of those people that's always got a device with them of some, you know, shape or form. So I know I've always got that. So if I need it and I just need to go off to, you know, a calm space, or if I need to help me sleep, I know I've got that tool. And I think the biggest thing about these apps now is accessibility. It's afforded people accessibility to something that maybe, you know, prior to, as you say, all of us having mobile phones was quite, you know, only maybe a time limited. So you could only have it in session, maybe if you were having a bit of hypnotherapy or something. But I think with the technology we have now, it's afforded, you know, more of process and stability, and you know, just to be able for people to have more access to it. So, you know, I think that's a pretty good positive for that.
I would say it is a mental health app, to be honest, because relaxation is good for our mental health, isn't it? And that sound of the sea, I mean, I've got a little sound box that I often use with hypnotherapy clients, and I have to say it's more or less constantly on the sound of the sea. I mean, there are various, you know, various different sounds, but it's more or less constantly 90% of people who want a little bit of not music so much, but a little bit of a nature sound, if you like, want the sea.
Yeah. So totally agree with that.
I think, yeah, it's something to do with water, because I mean, last night we've got a gazebo outside with a like a canvas top on it, and last night it was raining, but we had the door open because it was quite warm. And it was just lovely sitting here listening to that noise on the canvas. And I was like, oh, it sounds like when we're camping, you know. But you know, but we were in a nice warm house, so it was fine. I wasn't getting but it's something to do with the rhythmic noise for me. It's something to do noise and water. I'm a water baby. I love it. So anything to do with water. I mean, I'm one of these crazy people that actually likes the noise of the sound of the rain on the window and things like that.
Well, it's nice when you're inside, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean,
not being wet and cold. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
And am I right in thinking as well with Calm, there are sort of sleep stories? I haven't personally used Calm, I've used Headspace, but there are sleep stories read by people like, I'm trying to think of somebody now.
I think David Walliams did one.
Yeah.
But there's two versions, because obviously if you want to go into different parts of the app, then you have to pay for it. Or there's the bog standard basic one. I think the stories and things like that, you have to be on the paid app for that, but it's something like $2.99 or something.
They're quite cheap, aren't they? So I mean, Headspace as well, you can have a free, I think a free sort of trial period, and then you have to pay, don't you? But again, they're quite cheap.
Yeah.
Going back to
which is good. And
sorry, Kirsty.
Sorry.
I was just going to say, going back to, we were talking about.
I just said,
I think we're finding out there's disadvantages sometimes of technology at the moment, aren't we? Because it's a bit sticky. Do you want to repeat what you said, Kirsty? Okay.
All I was saying is that they need to be low price and accessible, because they don't need to be $10.99 a month or something like that, because that's when it starts getting into the realms of only certain people can afford it. So it either be stay free or it needs to be a reasonable price. And I'm pleased to see that a lot of the self-help ones are still at the reasonable price level, and it needs to continue for that.
Absolutely. What I was going to say was, you mentioned an app for people who were experiencing domestic violence. Mark, I know you were talking when we had a little chat earlier about another app in that kind of area. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, just something. When I got the invite to join the talk, was I just asked people, I volunteer, what apps they were using. So I was surprised by the proliferation of apps out there. But a couple of ladies I spoke to used something called Bright Sky. I think it's actually recommended by the NHS as well. And this is for people who feel that they may be suffering from domestic abuse but not sure, or something to offer to people who you think might be. The real benefit for this is it doesn't record any data on the phone, and none of the history appears in your browser history. So if your phone's being monitored by your partner, or your partner picks your phone up, goes to your browsing history, there's no record of anything that you've created or looked at through that. And there's a lovely little bit for evidence gathering, either through video or photograph or audio. Again, it just saves everything to a cloud. But again, there's no links to it. So it's very, very private and very secure.
I think that's fantastic. That's really well thought out then, isn't it? Because otherwise it could make the situation worse rather than
Absolutely,
better.
Yeah. I think it was the security. I think that's why the NHS has sort of put their not weight behind it, but it's one that they do recommend as well. So it was that security issue, I think, that was key for something like that.
Yeah. So who is that devised by? Because I think the problem is with some of these apps that people don't always know. A lot of these apps are devised by psychologists or therapists. A lot of them are devised in conjunction with universities or kind of academic institutions. But you don't always know who's devised the app. I mean, that sounds like a great app actually, in terms of the privacy, certainly. Do you know who's devised that?
I think it was developed jointly with Vodafone, but I leave Pandora, the jewelry people. I gather they had some sort of research into it and sort of funding and support for it. Again, obviously, without getting it wrong, obviously a big female sort of audience within Pandora, but again, just giving them the access there to it. And I think it's been really well picked up as well. But I think just that sense of, it was interesting, Vodafone putting their weight behind it as well, because obviously they've got the means and the technology and the brains to develop these kind of things. So
I mean, it's just bringing mental health support, isn't it, to a wider audience? Because, you know, you mentioned, Kirsty, about payment and stuff, and we've mentioned, actually we've been talking about clients, but a lot of people can't afford therapy. And whilst there's a lot of people out there who would benefit from therapy and in an ideal world would have therapy, actually there are going to be people who can't afford, you know, to go to a private therapist, and this may be, it might give them some support. If I know you can get therapy from the NHS, but you know, we all know there are long waiting lists. The NHS are also offering, though, apps as a sort of form of therapy, and I don't know what. I'm kind of in two minds about that a little bit, because I know that, you know, from my own experience of talking to clients, talking to friends, talking to general people I know, when they've approached their doctor, often there is a wide variety of offerings, from face-to-face counselling, from something that's much more CBT driven, to telephone therapy, to all sorts. But now that includes offering an app. And I wonder how people are going to feel about that.
I think my personal feeling is that if they're, you know, if it helps somebody, then, you know, rock on almost. If they're used in conjunction with therapy, then, you know, obviously I'm going to be biased, I'm a therapist, but if you can use it in conjunction with your therapist and use it collaboratively and all that sort of stuff, I think if you're using it instead of, but you do go and see somebody, that I think that's when the grey area comes in, I think. But who knows, maybe it will be enough of a stopgap that it just gives somebody that enough support that if they're on the waiting list, it gives them a bit of support whilst they're on the waiting list, because we know that a lot of people will drop off the waiting list because they're not getting anything, so they, you know, God forbid, they may have gone down a different avenue. But if it can be used as a stopgap, anything that I see as a positive intervention is great. But my personal view is I would query if they were being used instead of going to see somebody.
Interestingly, though,
there's enough what's the word I'm looking for? I don't think there would be enough support on there as opposed to going to
I mean, to be honest, that was really my feeling. However, when I did the webinar on mental health apps, I did a little bit of sort of research and digging, and for the main part, using mental health apps was seen as opening the door to someone having therapy rather than limiting.
At all.
I mean, I'm sure that doesn't happen in every case, you know, but because people were using an app, the general feeling was they were becoming so much more aware of their own emotions, so much more aware of or acknowledging more the impact of mental health on their life experience, that actually they were more likely to access therapy. So that was quite an interesting one, because it on the face of it, you would think someone may be using an app because maybe they're using an app because they can't afford therapy, and in that case, well, you know, that may be what they have to do. Or maybe people are using an app because they don't want to go to therapy, but actually it seemed to be working the other way around.
But I think if it can be used as a positive again, because, you know, coming to therapy for the first time, if you've not experienced it, can be scary. So if you've almost broken the seal, almost, if you've ventured into the world of what therapy may be like with the app, and, you know, the inference of, you know, this is what we do in therapy, these are the kind of things that we'd look at and get you to think about, then again, if it's used positively as a stepstone, you know, then as I say, you know, as long as it's a positive, then I'm
then
all
why
for.
not?
You know, we're fighting a battle constantly with mental health and people's awareness of it anyway. So anything that can give people a more positive outlook to that, a more positive presentation of it, and take some of the fear out of it, because a lot of people that come and sit in front of me go, this is really scary. And, you know, we get that. So if these apps, some of that feeling, that fear out of it, to get people more confident to be able to broach the possibility, then again, ticking the box.
Yeah, absolutely. So Mark, you're in placement, aren't you, if you're
Yes.
a year 3? So what's your kind of placement? I don't know if you've spoken to your placement about the idea of mental health apps.
Yeah, well, 2 placements, one with Cruise, but one with Turning Point, obviously with sort of alcohol and substance abuse. Interesting, they don't use a lot of apps within Turning Point. I've seen one come up, I Am Sober, which is very much a peer-led sort of app. So the idea is it just puts you in this community of people who are working with the same sort of addiction problems, which is quite popular, really, really big uptake on that one. But also Stay Alive, which has come up where there's a risk of suicide ideation, that kind of thing, because it allows people to create their own
I wanted to mention Stay Alive, actually.
Which actually someone's actually been kind of sort of share what's on their app, which I found really interesting. They've got little, I don't know what the term is, but it's like a little function where it saves photos and memories, so they can just
it's called a life box.
Yeah, I thought that was really, really good. But I want to pick what you were saying earlier, this fact that we've been thrown into this sort of new sort of wave of, if like, digital communication. I just wonder how much we can pull back if face-to-face, my own view is face-to-face is sort of the gold standard of what we do, but how much it will be, and certainly from the GP's end. I was talking to a GP on a call this morning with Cruz doing some training, and he said he just had some information back from the medical council that normally a GP will interrupt within the first 30 seconds of sitting with a patient to start already talking to them on diagnosis and sort of, you know, what they were prescribing, etc. Rather, they've got a 10-minute window basically.
Yeah, so if they're lucky.
How much will turn to sort of, you can get this app, you can do that, out you go, come to the next one, sort of thing.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned Stay Alive, because that's something that I wanted to mention today. I've been using that quite a lot with some of my work. I've actually downloaded that on my phone. That's a free app, because I think if you're going to use an app with somebody, or you're going to talk to them about an app, you need to be able to show them properly. And I downloaded it because I wanted to show it to somebody and they didn't have their phone with them. But for me, that's quite a good one. It's a sort of suicide prevention resource, really, but it has lots of information to keep users safe, because, you know, if somebody leaves your room and they're saying, well, you know, I've had suicidal thoughts, but I've got no plans, you know, to take my own life, and you feel that, well, you know, you're a little bit concerned about them, but actually they're not at the stage where you would break confidentiality and you've made that decision, but you only see somebody once every week. A lot can happen in between, can't it? And so it's almost like, it's like a digital safety plan. So they've got the life box, which you mentioned, where they can put all of the important or significant photos. They can do, there's a page that's reasons for living, and you can customize that. They've got a safety contacts page, but there's also links to crisis groups in the area, to national crisis groups. There's strategies for staying safe. And I just think that, you know, that's a brilliant app, because it could save someone's life in the moment. And it really made me think about when I've done a safety plan with people. And I have to say, I feel like I've done a lot more safety planning this last year that I've done for a long time. But when we do a safety plan with somebody and we take a copy and they take a copy, how many people have that hard copy with them at all times compared to how many people have their smartphone with them at all times? So it really made me, it's really made me think how good this is. Because if you are, you know, if you really feel like in the moment taking your own life, you're not necessarily going to go home if you're not at home and look out that safety plan.
And that said about accessibility though, didn't we? Because what you is absolutely right. It's all very well having that paper copy, but unless you're going to photocopy that and have a copy in every jacket, every bag, where we were saying about the accessibility of the app being there when you need it, and it's instant, isn't it?
Yeah, and I also think as well, if you've got a photograph of your loved ones, that's a lot more kind of potent, isn't it, than thinking, I can't take my own life because of these people that I love. Actually having a photograph of them is more powerful, isn't it? A lot more powerful. But also with things like, if we use CBT and we ask somebody to do a thought record sheet, there's other apps, that are really helpful for that. Like I think there's one, CBT record, something like that. Have I got that right? There's one called Cbt Thought Diary, certainly. And there's one called Catch It. And Catch It, you're actually catching the thought. And I sometimes, I'm sure you do, Kirsty, and potentially as well you do, Mark, as well, with clients on placement, ask people to fill out a thought record sheet. They don't have it with them, so they're at work, something's happened, they've got the thought record sheet at home. We all know, don't we, memorizing or remembering a situation that happened earlier that day. In remembering it, it's changed it, hasn't it, already? So if they've got that on their phone, they're much more likely, I think, to actually put something in straight away because it's really easy.
And I just think that we live in a world now where we want everything instantly, don't we? The world is just, I mean, even if you think about 15, 20 years ago, it was still quite a big thing if you had a computer at home to access on the internet and things like that, and you can play computer games on the computer. I mean, I remember the dial-up modems that some people on the courses today would get, what? You had to do what? But I remember that noise where it was dialing up to get on the and that wasn't that long ago. But now we've got so used to everything being online, instantaneously accessible, that it would almost be a void if things like that weren't accessible instantaneously. And I think because that's the kind of world we live in these days, where everything is at our fingertips, then apps like that who knows, even just clicking on that, and as you say about the photographs on that app, who knows, just by clicking on that and looking at that photograph or whatever they've got on there, that can't be seen as a hindrance. It's got to be a help. It's got to be seen as the positive that it is, but used in the right way is all I'm going to say.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And when I've used the Stay Alive app with clients recently, I've shown them on my phone, and if possible, they've actually downloaded it in the session. And we've actually filled it out in the session like a safety plan. Not to say that we haven't got a safety plan as well, but actually it's in effect there's a safety plan on there.
I think it keeps it very confidential as well, because it's like you were saying, back to the paper copy. Could you imagine being sat in the office, or if you work in a warehouse, you're a driver, suddenly getting you a couple of sheets of A4 out, and sort of think, what are you doing? We don't think anything now. I've seen someone sat with a phone quiet for 5 minutes, which it's normal. So I think it gives them that sense of confidentiality. People don't question what they'll be doing in terms of filling something in like that.
Yeah, because we're all on a phone all the time anyway, Mark, aren't we? But you know, I've used it. I've used the CBT ones more recently, actually, particularly with people who go, oh, when I get home, I've not got it with me. You know, or when I get home, it doesn't seem as important anymore. So I've just found that I get more engagement from some clients if something happens, then they can just fill it out in terms of the thought records kind of thing. Yeah. If they can fill it out in the moment rather than waiting 6 hours till the end of the day, when actually that real panic they had at lunchtime, it suddenly doesn't feel like a big deal anymore, but it did at the time.
But I think also it's a massive positive, because it can feel that they're taking even more autonomy into their treatment and to their well-being, and understanding their issues and understanding their progress as well. So I think, you know, most clients that I've worked with, I've only had a very small handful that have sort of been, I just want you to tell me what to do. But then obviously after the conversation that's not what therapy is, then it kind of works its way through, or not, as the case may be. Because, you know, they may vote with their feet, or they may come round to the fact that therapy is collaboratively working, you know. But I think with the apps, and as you say, being quite instant, and as you say, we don't think of it for 2 minutes if somebody's on their phone. But if they're on one of those apps going, do you know what, I recognise that I'm feeling a little bit out of sorts today. I'm not quite sure why. Let's go on to there and let's do a bit of processing. And if they come back to you then in session and turn around and said, this happened, I used this is what I found out. Can we explore that a little bit more? Fantastic. Because then again, that's more autonomy, more engagement in their own processing of their own issues for their own well-being. So yeah.
I mean, some of the apps as well, like there's one for self-harm, calm harm. You know, that's good in the moment. That's one of those things where you have a list of sort of strategies to cut down on the compulsion to self-harm, which you might have done again in a hard copy with somebody, but actually hard copy is no point. You know, if you got it handy, it is. You know, I'm not dismissing the power of the paper, but sometimes you just kind of need it there and then. And there's a couple of ones that I've worked with, eating disorders. You know, there's a couple of really good apps for eating disorders as well, like Recovery Record and Rise Up Eating Disorder. That's another good one where you can do log the food and the emotions, and you know, you can. It just enables people to kind of explore their own stuff a little bit more, and maybe come to the session already with some understanding, so you can maybe move things on a bit.
Yeah, because I think we're all aware, aren't we, that things don't happen just 1 hour once a week. So anything that, again, you know, as I said earlier, anything that can give them the autonomy of managing it in between sessions and then bringing it to you and say, look, I found that out, or I worked through this. Can we maybe have a look at a bit more in depth in this, because I didn't realise this. I mean, you know, for that, I think they're certainly a tool that's going to be here to stay. You know, and I'm sure they're there for anger management and for all sorts. I mean, I'm absolutely sure of it.
There's loads of them.
Yeah, exactly. You could probably find just about everything, couldn't you, really? But if it helps the client in between sessions to give them more knowledge, more help, more stability, more understanding, and then come to session and say, look, as I said, you know, I found this out. I didn't even have a clue about this, but this is something I worked through. Can we talk about it? Can we explore it more? Fantastic. Yeah, let's go for it, you know. And again, as I said, as long as they're used in the right way, and you know, for the positive that they're meant to be there for, then absolutely, you know, embrace it. If we don't embrace it, then get left behind, don't you?
I just hope, going back to what we said at the beginning about, you know, the NHS will now sometimes like prescribe an app, that if people don't want to use it, there will be an alternative, because, you know, I mean, we're bright young things, aren't we? You know, but not everybody likes technology. And, you know, not everybody has had to move with technology for their work. And some people are very reluctant to use it. And, you know, so I just hope that there is that kind of, that choice. I know I've spoken to a couple of people who were offered, for example, not a mental health app, but offered a telephone counselling from the NHS, but they weren't offered anything else. So it was kind of, and they didn't want to do that, so they ended up with nothing. So, you know, there's that.
Yeah, on your phrase, sort of bright young things, I suppose it's still that age demographic as well. Is it something like, I'll show my telecoms background. I think something like less than 20% of over 65-year-olds own a smartphone, or have access to a smartphone. So that sense is still a huge, when we think of this aging population, there's still a huge set out there who not sort of, you know, comfortable with internet use in terms of doing stuff online, or have access to apps and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which is a huge potential issue within the healthcare market and sort of mental healthcare market as well, that can't access those things.
Yeah, I mean, my mum is, you know, she has a smartphone, but she uses it for texting and occasionally, you know, and occasionally she'll use it to phone somebody, but actually she doesn't use it for apps and so on. So for her, that would really be a poor fit, you know. So I think it's horses for courses, isn't it?
It is, and I think the older style methods aren't going anywhere. No. But I think as therapists, we have to be not. I suppose we do have to be jack of all trades in a way, don't we? Because we have to be. I mean, we should be flexible in the methodologies and the theories and what we use anyway for the client, because we know it's very subjective. But I think, you know, if we don't want to move with the times, if we don't want to understand that technology's moved on, then I kind of think we're shooting ourselves in the foot a little bit as well.
Oh God, yeah.
I mean, we can't be masters of all knowledge. You know, we're always going to be finding stuff out, aren't we? But I think as long as we keep our minds open to the different progress and the different, you know, apps or, you know, whatever that's available, if somebody comes to you and said, look, this really interests me, and you say, oh no, sorry, I'm not doing that, well, they'll vote with their feet, chances are, aren't they? But if you don't, even if you don't know about it, oh, do you know what, I've not heard of that, I'll do some research on that and have a, you know. And we've got to move with the times. If we want to keep ourselves current and keep our practices open, we have to embrace how the world moves forward, because if we don't, then we're not going to be practicing for very long.
Well, we have to see the positives, and actually, you know, we touched on Zoom, didn't we? And I think that's quite a positive.
Definitely.
Or it can be. It can be.
For teaching, yeah, it can be. Yeah. You know, but from our teaching, if we didn't go on Zoom, then we wouldn't have been teaching.
It wouldn't have happened.
It wouldn't have happened. Yeah. So, yeah, it was scary. It was scary for us as well. You know, going online for everything. I mean, you know, when they introduced the breakout rooms, that was me. I was like, oh my God, how am I going to manage that? And Jude, because I was phoning Jude saying, what the heck about these breakout rooms? But, you know, it's like anything. We used it. We got used to it. It's now in our sphere of normal.
Oh, yeah.
So
I put my family in breakout rooms all the time. I kept having Zoom conversations with them and putting them in breakout rooms, because you kind of have to like have a bit of practice, don't you?
Yeah, anyway. Yeah, it was good. But technology is great as long as it's used positively. You know, again. Yeah. But I think that's the key for you know, most things in our line of work, isn't it?
Yeah.
So,
well, I think we could probably talk about mental health apps probably for another hour or so, but we probably ought to stop. So thank you so much to Mark and Kirsty for joining me today. There is a webinar on mental health apps if you're interested. That will be on Moodle. We've covered some of the mental health apps that I talk about on that webinar, but there are others as well if you're interested. But thank you so much for watching, and please look out for the next one. Bye-bye.
bye.
Bye.